You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with barrister and former government minister Anna Soubry and John Stevens, political editor at the Daily Mirror. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, The Guardian leads with the desperate search for the Iranian president after his helicopter crashed earlier today. The Express highlights the long wait for justice for victims of the infected blood scandal, with the final report set to be published tomorrow. The Times reports that the Labour Party will make it easier to change gender under plans to simplify the process if they win the general election. According to the Financial Times, G7 leaders are considering whether to rush through tens of billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine before the next US presidential election. The Metro reports on star chef Heston Blumenthal revealing that he's been diagnosed as bipolar. The Daily Star forecasts that we could see the hottest May in 150 years later this week. My director's laughing in disbelief. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Anna Soubry and John Stevens. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with our breaking news story and developing story that we've been running throughout the evening. And this is the case of the Iranian president feared dead after a helicopter crash earlier today, Anna.
Yes. And, I mean, we don't actually know that he is dead. I mean,
no.
The reports are still coming in. But what we do know, and it's there in The Guardian and a number of other papers cover it, is that is the report. The report is there's been this helicopter crash. The weather conditions, we could see from your pictures, look very murky, grim, not very good weather at all. And we'll wait to find out whether or not he actually is dead. And then, of course, the implications of that, what it will mean for Iran.
We're just showing the latest pictures of that search. We're told that the weather is extremely bad, visibility just down to a couple of metres, extremely foggy, and obviously this search and rescue ongoing in these very difficult conditions now, John.
Yeah, and in the papers it talks about this quote saying there's been a hard landing is how they're describing the crash, which is a slightly strange way of wording what seems to have happened. But there have been reports that officials say that they have made contact with some of the people who were in the helicopter. So there is a possibility there were some survivors.
But then those reports have been denied. It's quite a confusing picture because there has been information released and then that being countered. And you're absolutely right. Initially, it was described as a hard landing and then they did actually use the word crash. So it's quite a murky picture.
It's a murky picture, but as Anna says, we do know one thing. You look at those pictures, the weather was absolutely atrocious. You wouldn't want to be
You're in a
flying
helicopter in the mountainous area.
And it's also not just any helicopter. Because of the sanctions that are on Iran, their aeroplanes, their helicopters are particularly dilapidated. Someone on the radio earlier was saying that their transport minister, their defence minister, their head of the Air Force have all died in air crashes over the last few years. Do you think if you were the president of Iran, I would not want to take my chances in taking a helicopter, particularly in that sort of weather? But on Anna's point on what happens now for Iran, and obviously there have been loads of concerns about how Iran is behaving in different parts of the world, it seems like it won't make much of a change at all. So even though this guy was the president, in Iran they have the supreme leader who is above the president, and it's the supreme leader who makes all the big foreign policy decisions, all the things that could impact Iran's position in the world. And it is the job of the president just to carry out his wishes and kind of bring about the decisions that he's made. So it doesn't actually look like it's going to have too much of an impact on what Iran is doing in other places around the world.
And Anna, we heard from the supreme ruler today saying that the management of the country would not be affected while President Raisi is missing. We believe that his deputy might step in to the breach while he is missing. But as you say, it's all under the auspices of the supreme ruler.
You see, let's be honest about this. often with these sorts of regimes that are profoundly undemocratic, when somebody in a position of power is said to be dead, and this is what is seemed to have happened, it's an accident of some description, we all get a bit suspicious as to whether or not actually other forces are behind it, either external or internal, because often it is internal forces. So one side of whatever the party is or regime is taking out somebody from the post. It doesn't look like that at all. So the implications are, as John says, it would seem to be, yes, I mean, it's sad for it. It doesn't matter what people's politics are. This is a real human being who looks like being dead. But in terms of any stability or instability in Iran, it doesn't seem it will make much difference.
And John, do you think that it is unlikely that there is any foul play?
Well, there's been nothing suggested so far that there is, but it doesn't seem like they've even found the helicopter yet. They're still searching, and so it's quite tricky to work out did something happen or not before you've actually found the crashed aircraft.
Yeah, best not to speculate.
OK, let's move on to the Times front page and this story about the infected blood inquiry, which we'll be hearing from tomorrow. It's going to be a big story tomorrow. Many people waiting for a very long time for some conclusion. But we read that Rishi Sunak is actually going to make an formal apology tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, when you get these big public inquiries, and this is one of the biggest that there will ever have been in terms of uncovering what has undoubtedly been a shameful scandal for our country, then you would expect the Prime Minister to step up and on behalf of the nation, say sorry to those who've been infected and to their families. I mean, I was Public Health Minister in 2012. I met a number of the families. And I didn't give verbal evidence, oral evidence. I gave it by way of a statement to the inquiry. I was obviously not regarded as anybody who was needed to be cross-examined, if you like, and all the rest of it. But, I mean, it is shameful. And having met those families, I have to tell you, they were, to put it mildly, angry. And my view was, I wasn't surprised they were angry. They've been treated abominably. And it's by civil servants, by governments, and I'm not trying to shift the blame. I'm not trying to make out that politicians aren't responsible, because this public inquiry should have been held, I mean, probably a decade or more ago. Yeah. But to be fair to all of us of whatever political party in positions in the Department of Health, you were very much guided by your civil servants. And I remember profoundly the advice at the time, whatever my own views were. And maybe, some of us lacked courage, and it finally took that leap of courage from politicians.
And what was the advice at the time?
Sorry?
What was the advice at the time?
Oh, no, there's no cover-up. People did not know that this blood was infected. Everything that could have been done was done, and was done properly. For me, my other big concern, and it comes back to what's on this front page of the Times, was about compensation and money. And so the figure that is being put into, it's in there, a £10 billion that is a hell of a lot of money. £10 billion compensation. And when I was the minister, I actually said, how much would it cost to compensate these people? And my memory is it was somewhere in the region of about a third of a billion, about 300,000, anyway. Million. Anyway, in any event, my view is to pay them the money. Because the way, it's not just the cover-up, it's not just the denials, it's also the fact that the survivors and their families have been treated abominably by these so-called compensation schemes. And my predecessor, Anne Milton, valiantly tried to do the right thing. And it was like at every twist and turn, people would just be more and more humiliated. All endless form filling for the smallest amount of money. I mean, honestly, it was shocking. It was dreadful. Anyway, hopefully tomorrow we will begin to be able to draw a line under it. And hopefully that 10 billion or whatever the sum is going to be made available, because that's one of the concerns that these families and campaigners have, is that yet again, like the post office scandal, all talk, no delivery.
But John, yes, described as the worst treatment disaster in NHS history.
Yeah, and these victims, they've got the right to answers about what happened and why it happened, and obviously they've been waiting for such a long time. And this isn't just something that happened a few times by mistake and then it was just a few people who were affected. This happened over the course of around 30 years. There were tens of thousands of people who were giving this blood that was infected. And clearly tomorrow is going to be a big moment when they do finally, hopefully, get answers to some of those questions. As Anna says, Rishi Sunak will stand up in the Commons at some point in the afternoon and make an apology. But there is the big question of when is this compensation going to come to people? So all the indications over the weekend have been that the government are very much going to pay compensation. Jeremy Hunt did an interview in the Sunday Times when he was talking about how he'd been particularly moved by the case of one of his constituents who'd since died, and he was saying that he had made a promise to him that he was going to fix it and that they now are going to be able to do that. So the government has basically they haven't said we're going to pay the compensation, but they've clearly indicated they are going to. But the point that's raised in the Times here is there are concerns from the victims and their families that it will take months for the scheme to be set up. And the worrying thing here, or the shocking thing, is this fact that there's estimated that there is a death linked to this scandal every 4 days. So every day or every 4 days that this is delayed anymore, then more people will be dying without getting proper compensation. And so there really is now real impetus on the government to get on with this and actually get on with paying these people the money that they rightly deserve.
And do you feel, Anna, that the government are prepared to do that? You know, we've got quotes from people like Grant Shapps saying that the families affected have been let down for too long.
Well, it's all the right words, but we've heard these words in relation, as I said, to the post office scandal, just by way of example. And we've heard it about people... I can't remember the name of the boat now. The huge scandal about people being sent back to the West.
The
Windrush. The Windrush scandal. And again, people who've been promised money still waiting and then offered a pittance. And so these are genuine concerns because that's what history tells us. So, you know, it is concerning. And because they say there's a 5-week consultation period to devise a tariff system for payments. I mean, it has all that smell of more delay. And I mean, my view has always been there are barristers who know how to determine damages, what we call quantum. Get people in, look at it in that same test. Just give them the money.
And the other
give them the money.
The other thing that's on the front page of The Guardian, it says that it's possible the inquiry might call for those people responsible to face prosecution.
Yeah, what's that about?
Do you think that will actually happen, though?
I don't know, because I don't know where those people might be. I mean, are we talking about...
So much time has elapsed, it's
and the time has elapsed, and it must be people who have either administrated it in some way within the scheme to say, actually, we know there's a bit of a problem with some of the... I mean, I just don't know who those people are, but it looks like this inquiry has got absolutely to the heart of this scandal.
We shall see tomorrow and hear from the inquiry. We've, of course, been covering that throughout the day. John and Anna, for the moment, thank you. We're going to take a break. Coming up, amongst the stories we'll be discussing of the news on the front of tomorrow's Metro from top chef Heston Blumenthal, who's revealed that he has bipolar disorder. So stay with us for more. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, Anna Soubry, former government minister, and John Stevens, political editor at the Daily Telegraph, and barrister, I forgot to say.
The Mirror.
Barrister and former government minister.
You've upset him now. You said Telegraph, not the Mirror.
Did I?
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah.
My goodness. I must have read that. That was a mistake somebody else put in.
Actually, we haven't got the Mirror in. Actually, maybe make a phone call and get them to send it in.
It's on my phone.
OK, but we're going to start with the Metro and Heston Blumenthal, who's made us aware of the fact that he suffers with bipolar. And he actually sees it as a part of neurodiversity and actually is the reason for his business success. John?
Yeah, and he's saying here that he hopes that by being honest about this, he might be able to change some attitudes. And he's worried that, as you say, he says that he thinks that his bipolar has been part of his success in business. And he's saying he's concerned that there are loads of brilliant people out there, but because of the traditional ways of working, they haven't been able to kind of really fulfil their potential. They've not found their place in the world of work as they should have done. And he's saying, we need to think about this. There are loads of people out there who've got, who are neurodivergent in loads of different ways, and just thinking, is there a different mindset we could have where we try to make sure that all those people can slot in and we really do make sure that we use them properly?
And he's saying that the workforce is losing out on these particular skills that these people have.
Exactly, and he's right about that. The other thing which is so important about this is just generally, when you've got somebody like Heston Blumenthal who's hugely successful, but he's talking about mental health and he's talking about how it benefits him in his work. So it's inspirational, and any talk about mental health has to be a good thing, because it's always been sort of shoved away and we don't want to talk about these things. So that's good, because it's good for people who've got mental health problems that we are open and honest about it, which helps people in any event. But the other thing is it shows that people who've got mental health problems can work. And in fact, for a lot of people, especially if you've got the lower end of low-level anxiety and depression and so on, the working is a critically important part of you getting better or staying better or well. It really is that sociability of work, that doing something, all the things that work conveys for people is also hugely important. Because there seems to be a trend that if you have got that low-level problem with your mental health, that somehow you can't and you shouldn't work, and you absolutely should.
But the problem for loads of those people is that there are such long waiting lists to get any sort of help with different problems, especially if you're at the lower end of the spectrum. I think the government obviously wants to get more people back into work. I think everyone would appreciate that that would be a good thing. But I think the way to do it is by working with people positively to find ways that they can get back into work, rather than this constant, we're going to threaten to take away your benefits and we're going to crack down hard on universal credit or job seekers allowance or sickness benefits. And I think that when you start kind of using the stick rather than the carrot, it's just not really going to help people back to work at all.
Would you say, Anna, that the government is without compassion on this? Just very quickly.
I just think they don't understand. It's just easy to say, well, people are, basically, it's the old bad back that we're somehow being used as an excuse for people not to work. And there are people with these low levels mental health conditions that with a bit of help and support can work. And if you sort of keep beating people down in this way, if you don't give them that help and support, they go into that awful spiral and cycle of decline.
Just very quickly, just to squeeze it in, a bit of football, and you're going to lead us off on this. The headline, formidable.
Formidable, absolutely. So Manchester City, I'm not a fan, if you like. I love watching them play. I love watching Arsenal. I love watching football when it's played at this level. And this is the fourth time that the Sky Blues have won the Premier League. He's got Pep Guardiola, fabulous squad. And today they did it. Arsenal played well. For me, the real story, well done to Man City, the real story is the departure of Klopp from Liverpool.
I think you're going to say something about Nottingham Forest or something.
Well done. Nottingham Forest stayed up, which is brilliant. I support Notts County, you see, but there is no real rivalry. But for me, the real story was Klopp and the fabulous farewell at Anfield, which I did watch at length on the telly. So football is good, and English football is absolutely, the Premier League is the best.